the approval of the minutes. So do we have a motion to approve the April 22nd minutes?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a
you.
second. Any discussion or corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to approving the minutes? Okay, the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is BMC GIS data layers. Ms. Erin Bolton will provide a presentation on the BMC catalog of data layers available through their GIS platform. So we'll turn it over to Erin Bolton.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let me just get my screen shared here. I have to do my whole screen. Okay. Are you all seeing the slide deck? Yes. Okay,
Yes.
thanks, Matt. All right. Yeah, thank you all for having me. Matt invited me here this morning to talk to you a little bit about our relatively new product, which is a catalog of data layers map. So I guess before I get started, can you raise your hand if you with the icon if you are working with GIS frequently or occasionally even. I know I recognize a couple names on this list. Okay, great. It looks like some of you are, but many of you maybe are not, which is fine because this is, should still have lots of good content for you and is meant to be accessible even if you're not using GIS. So let me get started. Okay. So at BMC, we publish numerous data layers, some of which we do that for our own use, but also to make them publicly available. We have a regional GIS data center website. That's our open data site. And that makes the data publicly available for all of our jurisdictions and just members of the general public. Ooh. Am I still there? I have a feeling it's frozen.
I can hear you, but I can't see your screen.
Sorry about that. Am I back now?
Yes.
All right. I don't know why Zoom suddenly crashed. Let me try that one more time. Okay. Okay. Back to the slides. Yes. Okay. So we have this regional GIS data center. You all have seen probably open data websites before. Your counties all have them where you can search and view available data sets. Some of the main ones that we publish are, regional bike facilities inventory. We also have building permit data going back to 1999 for our whole region. And we compile also like public transit routes and stops for the region. So those may be some of the data layers that you might find of interest. And from that open data site, you can preview the data, you can download the data, you can also get the direct URL in order to add it to your own web map or desktop GIS map, actually. So this site we've had for a while. It's a great resource. I find it's especially good if you want to find one specific data set, but is maybe not so great if you'd really like to browse or compare data sets or get started perhaps using some of the data sets. And so for that reason, we developed a catalog of data layers map, as we're calling it. It's just an ArcGIS web map, but it has all of our layers kind of preloaded into it. It includes those main layers from our open data site. It doesn't have everything that's on our open data site. It excludes some things that are probably not of general interest and older, like things that have been replaced, older project cycles. And it also does have a few layers that we publish this is getting a little more technical, that are just on our GIS REST server, but they're not on our open data site because they're things that really maybe we would want to use. Like we have some custom boundary layers we use. And so, but those are in there as well. And so the main thing I wanted to do was show this to you. So I'm gonna do a little demo of it in a moment, but I wanted to point out that you can also access this from that open data site. So that's like a good landing page. The map is linked from there. And you do not need an ArcGIS account in order to view this map and work with it a little bit. But if you do have an account, you probably want to sign in first because that would also allow you to modify it and save a copy of it for yourself for later. So switching over. Are you seeing the map now? The ArcGIS online map? Matt, thumbs up.
Yes.
Someone?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Just making sure my screen sharing system is working out okay here. This is what you'll see when you first pull it up. You get a little bit of a, maximized, is it? Oh, it is, okay. You'll get a little bit of a welcome screen. What you're seeing here is kind of like the backstage view of an online map. Normally, if you're not really a GIS user, you'll be seeing like an app view of a map where it's got sort of, I would describe as a wrapper around it, and you're seeing fewer controls and it's sort of simplified. This is sort of the unwrapped or backstage version of it, where you have a lot more controls. You have these controls on the left, you also have controls on the right. It's fine if you don't know how to use them, but they are there if you want to do more with it. But the main thing you'll want to do when you get here is switch from the legend, which there's nothing showing here at the moment, to the layers. And this will give you access to all the layers that are here. I'm going to turn off the welcome screen, and you'll see this is just the outline of our Metropolitan Planning Organization area. And you can jump into exploring the layers. They're sort of grouped here. I'm going to expand regional data sets and turn on. So we do have our cooperative forecast round 10 in here. So you can, this is classified, just some basic symbologies, basic map layer. But you can click on any of the TAZs and find out, the information, the forecast that was here. This can be a good way to really jump into exploring the data. You can also, as I mentioned, one benefit of having it in a map like this is then you can start adding other layers we have. So, you could turn on public transit routes and see, well, how do those interact, and zoom in. You have like full controls over here if these are layers you're familiar or controls you're familiar with, to go in and you can change, anything about how the map is styled, pick different classes for it. If you've never worked with Map Viewer before, you might want to use a little quick tutorial to get to see how to do some of this, or you can just play around with it and figure it out, which is what a lot of us do a lot of the time anyway. But also from here, so how does this sort of relate to our data catalog? If you wanted to find out, well, okay, I like this layer, how can I put it in my map, or how could I download this data? You can also do that from here. You click on the layer up at the top, it'll take you to properties, and under information, it gives you the source layer. So if you click on this, this is the URL that you would need in order to add it to your own web map, or again, desktop GIS mapping. But a main reason we developed this is that now that it's all the layers, instead of just being in the open data site, are put here together in the map, is that this is a really great starting point for, if you have an account, you can save as and make your own map. So even if you only just wanted this one layer or maybe two of these layers, you can save as, and then you can delete everything else in here that you didn't want, and you've got a really good starting point. So this is we're developing this for our internal use as well, for colleagues like Matt and others who use some GIS and aren't really maybe using it all the time. This is like a quick jumpstart way for them to see what data we have and start using it in a map. And then another thing you can do from this point, when it's already in the map, is you could add data layers from a different source. So again, your counties all have an open data site, so you could grab some data from there and put it in here if you wanted to compare our CFG layer to your, zoning layer or anything of that type. You can probably find that on your open data site. I was just going to show, let's see. So Esri the software manufacturer, also has an open data site. This has a lot of great American Community Survey layers already loaded in here that you can use. I was going to do an example today from our Maryland data open data site, which is called MD IMAP or Maryland IMAP. Um, so how could you add something from Maryland IMAP to the map that we were looking at? I was just going to go in here and search for priority funding areas. Um, this is the one I want. So again, this is like a map view. You can look at it here. But if you go to view full details and down to this bottom right, there's a view data source. If I click on that again, I get this sort of text looking information about where the data source really is. I can copy that. And then when I go back to my map, I can add in any of those types of layers here, add layer from URL, just add the URL, add to map. And now I have my priority funding layer. So now I've combined data from a different source here. Just to show you, I'm going to turn off the public transit routes for a moment. And it's added it here at the top. If I click on this layer, again, it gives me controls over here. I'm just going to take the transparency and make it like 50% transparent. So now I can really see which of these TAZs fall inside of the priority area, and I can click on them and get the same information about them. So any questions while I'm here in the map? I'm almost done anyway, but if there's anything else you wanted to see or ask while we're here. All right. So yeah, that was just a brief little tour. We're hoping this will be a good resource. Again, we think it's a good internal resource, but also hoping that others, member jurisdictions might find it useful. And we're also, what we're doing is sharing it with our consultants at the start of projects that involve creating online maps. Because again, it's just a good way for them to see what data we have available and not be like duplicating efforts or trying to find new data that we've already published. Just a fast way to share that information. And I assume Matt's going to share out these slides at the end. So I just put in this slide with all the open data sites for our region that are useful. So the BMC one we looked at, IMAP we looked at. We took a quick look at Esri Living Atlas. Again, they have American Community Survey data that's really nicely formatted. It's already got aliases, the real descriptions for each column instead of like the wonky census codes. So you can easily see what data you're looking at quickly. And then, added them in for all of our member jurisdictions. And that is it for me for today. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you use it and have some feedback, something that could be improved or changed. This is relatively new, so we'd love to hear from you.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Any questions for Aaron? Hey, Aaron, I had a quick question on the save as function or the save layers function. So if I go in there and start selecting layers and start to generate a map for Queen Anne's County or Anne Arundel County, crossing over, looking at certain areas, I can save that and come back to that same map anytime?
Yes, but only if you have an ArcGIS Online account. So that would be, yes, that's the the sticking point. But if you do have an ArcGIS Online account, if I'm switching to the map, are you seeing it here? Oh, okay, good.
Yes.
Zoom was being weird again. So yes, I'm not signed in right now, but yes, you can save as. I'll show you. So the trick that I've noticed though is if I sign in right now, it's going to undo this work. Watch how quickly that happens. Of course, got my own username wrong here.
So the secret is to log in through your account when you're going in to work on this.
Oh my gosh. Okay, there it goes. Third time's a charm. Yes, the secret would be log in first, or if you're already logged in. So see how it just reset me to the beginning though. But I can go if I go and turn on, 2 layers and make some changes, then I can go here to save as, and it will just let me save it as, a new name in my own, this is my own account. And yeah, so you can take
Okay.
this and and copy it and use it as a starting point for anything you want.
Okay, and then
And
if we
then you
pull
can
our,
go in and like delete a bunch of layers, that you may not be
yep,
useful to you, but we have like our tip layers in here. Actually, that needs to be updated with this year's tip layers. We have some other just general census geographies. I mean, some of these are just boundary lines and things that are useful if you're making a map. The most of what's the interesting data sets, I would say, are in the regional data sets group here.
no, I was totally unaware of that function that we could save that work and go back and not have to recreate it. So that's very helpful.
Okay,
I'll have
wonderful.
to
Great.
talk to Tyler about that.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Yeah, check that out.
Hey, Aaron, I had a
okay,
question.
Mhm. Hi, how are you?
So, hi. So if we save it to our web maps and you like update a layer, will we get the updated version from one of your layers, or do we have to go back
Yes.
and resave it?
No, you would. It would continue as long as we publish. Yeah, if we publish an updated layer and overwrite what's there, yes, you would have the updated version because all of these are like, so like our bike facilities is a good example of something that we update. When you look in here in information source layer. So anytime we update that source layer, you would get the updates live in the map. Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Even if you've saved as, yeah, it'll just, all of these layers are just pulling from published data that's on the web. Nothing is pulling from like someone's desktop or local drive or server or anything.
okay. Any other questions for Aaron? Okay, Aaron, thank you very much for presenting. We
Great,
appreciate that. It's good information.
great to be here this morning. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Okay, next on the agenda is the round 10A forecast update, and Matt will take us through that. So we'll turn it over to Matt.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to get the slideshow going and share my screen with everyone. Thanks again, Aaron, for being here this morning. I really appreciate the presentation. Can you confirm real quickly while I'm pulling this up that we can save as with just the free ArcGIS Online accounts, correct? That won't be anything to where they need to have the paid accounts, correct?
Like a free personal account, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can. Do you have one to test it with? I don't
No.
have one to test it with, but I think you can. The only thing that's blocking you from doing it is just that you're not signed in.
Okay, cool.
Yep, should work for that too.
Okay. Can everyone see just my slide deck?
Yes.
Okay, great. So being mindful of time, I know we have a few people that might need to hop off a little early. We do need to still get to our vote for this. So I'm going to try and move through this relatively quickly, even though it is a decent amount of information to get through. However, all of this has been shared individually with member jurisdictions. So all of this has had eyes on at some point. And we've gone back and forth individually. So this is more of just an overview for the full group of the region and every jurisdiction in our new round 10 or round 10A, excuse me. So as most of you are aware, the primary responsibility of the CFG is the development of jurisdiction and transportation analysis zone level estimates and forecasts for population, households, and employment. So the last round that we did was round 10, which was approved in July 22. So we are doing an update on that now, which will be our round 10A, which is what I'll be presenting on today. This was largely brought on by the extension of our LRTP out to 2055 and requiring that we extend our forecast out to 2055 as well to match where the previous round 10 was only extended out to 2050. We have still maintained the same base year of 2020. We have just extended that out the horizon year to 2055. So here you'll see the general history of our forecast rounds. And this has been an ongoing process since last fall. So wrapping that up this summer. So we're going to go through a general overview of the forecasts for population, households, and employment at the regional level, and then I will provide a jurisdiction level review for each. Again, if you have any questions, just stop me, raise your hand, or just hop in. But I'll also have time at the end to discuss anything. So what you'll see here is our round 10A forecast for population. The main line is that we're expected to see steady growth in population and households through 2055. At the regional level, our 10A is showing population growth of about 321,522 persons, so about 11.3% growth over this 35-year period, so 2020 to 2055 in round 10A. That comes out to about 11,000 persons a year, with that increase slowing post 25 to about 9,000 a year total. So not a big of a shift or a large shift. And we are still maintaining that growth. It is just a more moderated estimate of growth that we've all been discussing in previous meetings brought on by several population changes that we've experienced over the past few years. So you'll see that the largest expected total population increase is in Anne Arundel, with a growth of 87,663 between 2020 and 2055. That's followed by Baltimore County and then Howard County, with that largest percentage increase being in Howard County as well, with that 21.6% forecasted growth in population. Moving on to households, you'll see that Anne Arundel, again, is going to have that largest growth in their forecast, with about 44,761 households. So for that base year, we see Anne Arundel is ranked second in terms of total households behind Baltimore County. And by 2055, which still remains second, but that growth is outpacing the county. So you'll see that while it still has relatively a few fewer households, you are maintaining that growth. So our largest percentage increase is going to be shown in Harford County, and we see households growing by 32% from 2020 to 2055, with Howard closely following at 30.9 and Anne Arundel at 20.3%. Baltimore City is having, or will show, the slowest growth over this time. This is not a surprise, I hope, for anyone. We have seen Baltimore City's growth has been relatively flat and will remain so into the future, with steady projected growth, but not at a rapid rate, I would say. So while regional population is expected to grow by 11.3% through 2055, households are growing at 15.6%. So about 4 percentage points over what we see population growing at. So this is really nailing down that trend to where we are seeing smaller household sizes declining in the region and nationwide, with our region declining from 2.59 to 2.49 by 2055 in overall persons per household. And about 65%, so 2/3 or a little bit over, of all household growth that's projected through 2055 will occur between 2020 and 2040 within the region. And again, I'm going to share all this with everyone. I know this is a lot of numbers to look at and take in. So all of this will be shared after as well for additional review. So moving on to employment, you'll see that the largest numeric increase between 2020 and 2055 is expected again in Anne Arundel County, where we have an additional 127,000 jobs that are forecasted. Anne Arundel in base year for 2020 is ranked third in terms of total employment, and by 2050 and through 2055, that forecast job growth moves Anne Arundel County into first rank, ahead of Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Between those three jurisdictions, the city, county, and Anne Arundel County, they account for 75% of our regional employment growth, with that largest percentage being, well, for total rate, but the higher percentage is going to be in Hartford, where we'll see a 54.5% growth. Between round 10 and round 10A, the forecasts for employment in Baltimore County was reduced to mirror our QCW rates more closely than round 10 did. So for our round 10 estimates for 2025, it was 411,000 jobs, to where now we are closer to that QCW estimate at 346 for 2025. Just for reference, the QCW for 2025 that we have just gotten new data on, it looks like there's about 369,000 employees that they're counting. So very similar in trend and in scope of those estimates as well. Do just want to call out that while it will appear that Baltimore County is losing jobs over this period, this is largely due to the baseline not being adjusted. And with maintaining that baseline, it is going to reduce that overall numeric growth. But whenever I get to Baltimore County, we'll talk about this more in detail. So this is going to be our average household size, or persons per household. Nothing extremely drastic in change between rounds. So you'll see from 2020 through 2055 here, you'll see that we have a overall decline from 2.59 persons per household to 2.49. So while this is a relatively significant jump, this is following population trends that are occurring nationwide, to where we are seeing the reduction in overall household size. So this follows that trend and matches it pretty closely. Within the region, there is some variation in that average household size. For example, the lowest average household size in 2020 is Baltimore with 2.33, and then Howard with 2.8. All jurisdictions in the region are expecting a decline in this average household size, but that largest household change is going to be in Hartford, where they're expecting 2.65 down to 2.31. Again, I think this is mainly just concentrated within shifting household sizes and population dynamics, and not necessarily anything that is cause for concern. And just for reference, this has been declining consistently for the past century. So this is nothing new to really point out, but just to have it here for reference. Okay, so we're going to move on to going through the regional breakdown, and then moving into jurisdiction breakdowns as well. There will be several charts that are going to be shown here. I do recommend that if you're not already in full screen, you pull it up into full screen on your viewer. That way it will be easiest to see. If not, a few of the graphs and the numbers shown with them may be a little bit hard to see. So for the Baltimore region, this is going to be a comparison between round 10 and round 10A. A lot of numbers to look at here, but what you're going to see is just that comparison from 2020 on to 2055, with obviously round 10 cutting off at 2050 as it did not extend out to 2055. We're seeing steady growth in population through 2055 at the regional level. It is moderated growth compared to round 10 across the forecast horizon. The gap between rounds is pretty modest early on, about 20,400 persons, so about 0.7% below R10 for R10A in 2020 and 2025. But this continues to widen as we go through the forecast itself. So as we get closer to that 2055 horizon year, that gap does widen, but at expected proportion levels. So whenever we are moving on with are moving into these forecast years, you'll see the differences in population levels. So for example, we see when we're talking between the differences between these rounds, I don't want it to seem that population is necessarily dropping across these times, but just in that these estimates have been adjusted and evaluated for more moderate growth. So for example, you'll see that the 27,519 between round 10 and round 10A isn't necessarily suggesting a decreased population over that time. It's just suggesting that the rate of growth is a little bit slower than what was projected in round 10. And just for reference, I do want to compare these 2025 figures to the most recent population estimates released by the census. So for the region, the overall difference is about plus 55,000 persons in our forecasts compared to the census projections, so about 2% over. So very, very close in relative terms. So, and there are many jurisdictions that are much closer to those estimates as well. So I just want to ground it in that and make sure that everyone is aware that these forecasts are really grounded in most recent estimates. This is going to be households projections. So again, it's a more nuanced story than population growth. Regional population is expected to grow by 11.1% through 2055, with households projected to grow by about 15% region-wide. So again, this is just really nailing down those smaller household sizes and different population dynamics that we're experiencing. So between 2020 and 2040, we're expected to add about 109,000 new households. So that's about 2/3 of the household growth through 2055. And that's really emphasizing more of a front-loaded growth in these forecasts as well. For households, the difference between round 10 and round 10A was about 2,200 for that 2020 to 2030. That increases a little bit more to about 8,500 for that 2030 to 2040 round. And then round 10A outpaces round 10 whenever we move into 2040 to 2050. So you'll see that while in earlier years, round 10 was outpacing, round 10A catches up and actually forecasts a little bit stronger growth. For employment. So again, you'll see that drop in the 2020 to 2030 area to where this was largely brought on by that recalculation in Baltimore County employment figures. So despite this lower starting point, round 10A's growth trajectory post 2025 is comparable to, and in some periods outpaces round 10's. So the final expected growth of 321,000, I think it's 957 between 2020 and 2055 in round 10A compared to that 374 in round 10. So regionally, round 10A is projecting employment growing at 21% from the 2020 baseline. So pretty significant growth seen there. Compared to round 10's 147,850 jobs in 2020 to 2030, you'll see that round 10A has that 125,568 growing in that same time. So a slower growth, but again, this does converge later on into the population estimates or employment estimates. This is just showing population change in round 10A relative to round 10. So we're seeing, again, moderated growth across the forecast frame between round 10 and round 10A, with round 10A being relatively lower than round 10. And similar results shown here for employment. You'll see that noticeable decline in employment between 2020 and 2030, as we've been discussing. So where round 10A shows roughly 103,000 fewer forecasted jobs in 2020 to 2030 compared to round 10, the forecasted growth resumes a very similar pattern to round 10 as we move into that 2030 to 2040 and 2040 to 2050 horizon as well. So while it is not matching the growth that we had in R10 for that 2020 to 2030 period, it is matching later on in the forecast years. So for Anne Arundel, we'll see population forecast a downward revision to population relative to round 10 is consistent throughout population or throughout the forecast frame. We're showing slower growth than round 10 had projected, particularly in that 2020 to 2030 period. And then we're moving forward into more leveled out projections as we move forward into that frame. So the population forecasts were consistently growing across all periods from 2020 to 2050. This is just a decelerated growth rate compared to that in round 10. So we'll see that the largest single period gain occurs between 2025 and 2030, and then slowly decreases from there. And for reference to the population estimates, there is an additional 1,741 persons compared in the forecast to the most recent 2025 estimates. So again, it's extremely close. It differs by 0.29% from the census estimates for 2025. The forecasted 2025 number does, so extremely close. For Anne Arundel, household and employment figures were not revised from round 10 and held steady. So for these, we are not seeing change there. We'll see the same projected growth across those two forecast frames. Population growth, again, you'll see that it is significantly moderated in 2020 to 2030, with that catching up in 2030 to 2040, kind of narrowing that gap, and then very similar here in 2040 to 2050 compared between rounds. And for employment, you'll see that it was remaining consistent. It goes across, same as all of the estimates are, with just a anticipated increase occurring, or an accelerated increase after 2050 into 2055. This is going to be for Baltimore City. We'll see about modestly above round 10 in the early forecast years, so about plus 4,700 or about 0.8% in 2025. So with these two rounds converging steadily as the forecast extends. So the net difference of negative 224, 200, or roughly 200 persons by 2050. So really a near zero kind of net difference that we're seeing here. This is continuing that kind of flattened growth that we have been seeing throughout Baltimore City population, to where we will see steady growth, but it will be relatively small in absolute numbers. And for 2025, in that population estimates, it differs by a little under 5%. So again, very close in these estimates to what the census is projecting for these same years. So very close. For household figures, they are going to be revised downward relative to R10 across all these years, with that gap widening from 2025 onward to 2050 in between these rounds. This is not, I think, a significant kind of reduction. I think this, again, is just a general recalculation for expected growth. For employment, we're revised downward by consistently about 74 to 7,600 jobs across all forecast years. So kind of just that general kind of scalar reduction in overall employment expected, or overall expected employment growth. And population change, what you will see here, as opposed to many others, you'll see that round 10A is actually outpacing round 10 in that 2020 to 2030, and then declines with that 2030 to 2040 and 2040 to 2050 period, to where round 10A is outpaced by round 10 in that expected growth. However, in relative numbers by total growth, you're just seeing, I think it's 1,811 close in this difference here. So not, or sorry, the difference is 2024 between those. So not a significant difference in kind of that expected forecasted growth. Again, with employment showing about 7,400 fewer jobs in that 2020 to 2030 compared to R10. But this is also offset by the stronger 2030, 2040 performance in R10, where that is outpacing, or round 10A is outpacing round 10. So for Baltimore County, these revisions are modest and within the normal bounds of these in-around adjustments. You're seeing that round 10A population is consistently growing across all periods. So it's rising from 854,000 to about 917,000 by 2050, and then to 930 by 2055. So again, we are forecasting continued growth, just at a more moderated level than what was expected in round 10. And with those population comparisons next to the census, this is again within 2% range of those estimates. So extremely close whenever we are leveling that down to that 2025 estimate year. Household figures show a more mixed pattern relative to round 10, with slightly above in 2025 to 30, and then before shifting down to below round 10 from 2035 onward. This is largely offset by the expected growth post 2050, so indicating that we'll have more modest growth expected in households in the near term, with more expected growth in the longer term. So for this adjustment here in employment, again, the figure for 2025 was reduced relative to round 10 for overall employment. So this 346, 249 for 2025 is significantly closer to what we have for our employment estimates that we receive. So again, this is a well-supported adjustment, and I think represents expected employment growth more accurately relative to round 10, but it does show reductions whenever compared to it. But the growth frame that is actually in round 10A matches and in some points exceeds what was in round 10. So while the absolute numbers are reduced in between these rounds, the rate of growth in round 10A is actually surpassing round 10 in many of our forecast years. Again, we'll see these moderated growth factors here, with going to be the general story for the majority of jurisdictions, continued growth just at a moderated level. And again, this is just another way of having to view employment change within our frame. And again, you'll see this 2020 to 2030 readjustment here. Do just want to point out that, again, while in cumulative terms, this is going to show a reduction in overall jobs compared to the base year that we are using, in growth terms, we are still growing in employment, and it's actually growing at a rate higher than round 10. Okay, for Carroll County, again, you'll see consistent growth. It is decelerating compared to round 10, but you'll see that the largest gain is going to be in that 2025 period, with it declining in between there. Round 10A population is nearly identical to round 10 across all the forecast years. For example, you'll see when we get to 2050, it's 188,000 and 300 total persons being the difference between those estimates. And their 2025 estimate compared within 0.3% of the censuses. So again, we are very confident in these. Household change was really targeted. So there were, I think, 6 TAZs that were adjusted with overall household adaptations. And aside from that, not much household change assigned between these rounds. At the jurisdiction level, you'll see that net employment revision remains modest. So round 10A 2050 employment is about 1,356 below round 10. But that gap does narrow as we go across the employment projections. Moderated growth, as we're seeing here, compared to round 10, slightly lower in 2020 to 2030, outpacing growth in round 10 in 2030 to 2040, and then still slightly outpacing in that 2040 to 2050, but again, relatively similar, with overall growth expected to be about the same in that period. Employment projections, as we were just discussing, it's a downward revision in round 10A for that 2020 to 2030 period. And then this trend reverses in 2030 to 2040, and round 10A continues to outpace round 10 in 2040 to 2050. So you'll see that adding relatively the same jobs by 2050 with that additional increase for post 2050 into 2055. So round 10A for Hartford is simultaneously reducing population and increasing households relative to round 10 in the same forecast year. So what we're seeing is, again, as I discussed at the beginning, a shifting in overall household structure. So moving into fewer persons per household, but with continued population growth. So it will be continued population growth, just in different population dynamics than what has been experienced or what was forecasted in round 10. Hartford actually had the closest estimate to 2025 with the census, being only over by 393 persons, so a difference of 0.15%. So extremely close, and again, very strong estimates there. You'll see that we're holding a steady and consistent increase in round 10 compared to round 10A compared to round 10 across all the forecast years, to where we're expecting continued and sustained household growth along with population. But again, population is at a more moderated level than households. Employment change is a consistent and substantial decline in round 10A compared to round 10 across all the forecast years. No specific areas experienced larger than 20% adjustments to this round, so this is largely applied across all areas in the jurisdiction. So again, moderated growth estimated within round 10A compared to round 10, with a consistent gap across all decades, so suggesting a structural downward revision in long-term population expectations. And for employment, you'll see Harper County is showing, again, those downward revisions The largest being experienced between 2020 to 2030, leveling out again, or closer to leveling out around 2030, 2040, and then relatively identical in that 2040 to 2050 forecast frame. Again, you'll see moderated growth compared to round 10, to where the growth rate is matching or reduced around 2025 to 2030. And then we'll start to see that that is carried across throughout. The growth rate decelerates significantly across the forecast horizon. So we're indicating kind of a progressive slowing in population growth. Household figures are going to match round 10 exactly through 2030. And then we'll see that round 10A is adjusted under round 10 in 2035 onward. This is largely concentrated within some targeted areas, but again, it is not a significant reduction here. It is more of just a overall reduced or moderated growth expectation. Employment also revised down across all the forecast years between 2025 to 2050. We're seeing that this will continue to reduce employment by about 3,500 jobs through 2040 before leveling off to round 10 in 2045-ish. There it is. So compared to round 10, round 10A shows, again, moderated growth. We're still maintaining that same growth, just at a moderated level in round 10A as compared to round 10. And the employment projections are showing that similar moderated outlook as well. And finally, we will move in to Queen Anne's. Consistently growing across all periods in population. Growth is front-loaded in the near term, between that 2020 to 2030, kind of leveling out to round 10 as well as we move into later projection years. Round 10A population is revised relatively upward to round 10 across all the forecast years. And this is largely driven by some specific Kent Island adjustments for increased population in those areas. So while you will see some moderated increases here, it is largely concentrated with those areas. Household figures are following that same directional pattern, with those kind of increases being concentrated in that same areas where population increase was as well, and being relatively similar to round 10 across, with just moderately increased growth. And then for employment, maintain the same. There was not a specific or indication for any significant alterations between round 10 employment, as this was matched relatively well with round 10A households and population estimates. So again, we've got increased growth here in that 2020-2030 timeframe, with a lightly reduced or moderated growth compared to round 10 in 2030-2040 and 2040-2050. And with employment staying solid or steady across these projections, with that increase seen from 2050 to on to 2055. And with that, I will discuss the approval process. So following this, I will ask that we take a vote to approve moving this on to the technical committee, which will meet on July 7th. And that will later potentially be brought to the BRTB for their vote as well. This slide, again, will be posted for anyone who needs to reach out to their tech committee member to let them know that this will be coming down the pipe. These names are here for anyone who was not aware of this already. And that's all I have for you this morning. I'm sorry that I had to say round 10 and round 10A so many times. Happy to take any questions that you may have. And then afterward, I will ask the like for your recommendation to the BRTB with for the round 10A figures. And then potentially I would like to discuss in kind of new business that we might want to adjust the naming conventions for the rounds and potentially adjust it to include the actual forecast years instead of round 10A to where it will be more easily identifiable as being updated forecast. So I did just want to propose that out there, that if there is a desire to change the name to be a little bit more understandable and approachable, we are open to that. Okay.
Kathleen Comer here.
Hey,
I have
Kathleen.
I have a question with the employment, with the downward adjustment like between 2020 and 2025. Since that kind of, at least for Carroll County, I don't know if it was for the other counties as well, it was more of an adjustment to the figure or a correction rather than an actual loss of jobs. So
Correct.
so that's not problematic. I mean,
No. Yeah.
Okay.
It's whenever looking at the raw numbers themselves, it will appear as there is a decrease, and that is largely brought on by maintaining the 2020 base year and those projections included there. So within that, it will look that jobs are actually being reduced. But to your point, that is not the case.
Because I more thoroughly went over the employment and made a lot of corrections. So just to clarify that, I was just curious if that was the case with the other.
There were a few jurisdictions that did the same. This was largely, the largest change was within, or adjustment was within Baltimore County in that 2025 frame. But again, that number is significantly closer to what the QCEW figures are expecting. So I think that adjustment was an improvement.
And so as far as population, household, and employment, none of us really need to, there was no real outliers or
No.
You're satisfied with the projections and
Very.
I mean, I feel like I was pretty conservative, at least or moderately conservative, however you look at it.
Yeah. And again, that was across the board with all jurisdiction submissions. It was a more moderated growth outlook than what was expected in round 10. I've been staring at these for a very long time. I am very confident in these.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, thanks to everyone for all the work that went into this. I know that it was a lot, but I think that we have some very solid forecasts here.
And I had one more question. Is it okay? Katie?
Go ahead.
Okay. On the household size, going back to that, was that from the census or was that calculated from our projections?
That's calculated from the
County
projections.
seemed kind of high.
Yeah, it's calculated from the projections.
Okay. All right. I was just wondering if Carroll County seemed a little bit high then.
Not necessarily. Again, comparing household rates, it gets a little bit tricky when looking with the census. And again, with these forecasted years, it is likely that the households in the forecast or the projected households will outpace what is in the census. But I don't think that's a significant cause for concern.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Kathleen. Did
Any other
anybody else?
questions for Matt?
Matt, could you go back to the last your
Right.
last slide with the technical the members of the technical teams?
Yeah, sure. Let me pull that back up. Sorry, just going to pull it up outside of the regular view. And again, I'm posting this after the presentation, so this will be available as well. Was there a specific question regarding this, or did you just need to have a look at it again?
Just a second look.
Yeah, no worries. Does
Okay.
anyone else have any questions there?
Okay, if we hear no more questions, we'll move forward with a vote to recommend the round 10A forecast to the technical committee and to the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board. Do I have a motion to recommend the 10A forecast?
And to recommend the 10A forecast.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it and the motion passed, and we recommend the 10A forecast to the technical committee and the BRTB. So next on the agenda is just other business. Matt, do we have any other business?
The only other business would be the proposal that we consider possibly renaming Round 10A to include the forecast years. I can send this out in an email to everyone and we can continue to discuss it that way if that's preferred.
I'm fine with that change.
Okay. And again, this would just be to expand it to where instead of Round 10A, this would be Cooperative Forecast 2020 to 2055, to where we're including those years to make this a little bit more approachable and especially understandable whenever we're sharing this more widely.
Makes sense.
Okay. I will send out a little bit more notification regarding this, but as more discussion pops up, but just really wanted to float that here and make sure that there was no general objection to that.
Okay, any other business for the cooperative forecasting group before we close the meeting? Okay, well, and the next meeting is August 26th. And if nothing else, we'll take a motion to close the meeting. I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
Thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
everybody, for being here today, and congratulations on the recommendation for 10A and advancing that. That's a big, lot of work went into that, and
Yes.
I appreciate all the work that everybody did. So thank you very much.
Yes.
And everybody enjoy their summer, and we'll see you all in August. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, bye.